Yeah, she's got some nice long hair.
Welcome back to the Unbearable Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Barron. Make sure to like and subscribe out there on YouTube. Also, you can download the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Just search for Unbearable Sports. And if you're a sports bettor, you can go to betus.com, use promo code Unbearable for 125% back on your first deposit. Great deal, helps out the show tremendously. But today, we had to come up with something fun, right, Johnny? Like,
yeah,
we're in kind of this no man's land of offseason where there's not a lot going on for the Chicago Bears, or if there is, it's been over talked about. That's why today we are going to be thinking about, out of all these playoff teams that we've been watching, who do we think resembles the Bears the most for next year, right? Kind of a path to the playoff teams. But also, I have not asked this. PayPal, how are you, my friend?
doing good, Brad. Yeah, had a nice weekend. Loving the new car and everything. But when you kind of mentioned this idea to me, I was like, oh, this is a great idea. Like, it brings you in that optimistic mood of like, yeah, what can the Bears be? And like, who do they most resemble in these playoffs teams? Whether they're a team that has been eliminated already or a team that's still in the playoffs and, are looking really good. So I'm excited for this one, Red.
And I think there's going to be I think that there's a couple that really stand out, that make it real easy, that will be touching base. But also, as I was going through this, like we were saying in the pre-show, there's a good handful of teams that actually it's like the Bears could do this. So the whole thing with this, obviously the Bears will have their own spin, but we wanted to just kind of look at some of these teams. How did they get there? And also it also frames the conversation. How far off are the Bears overall from the playoffs? So I'm excited for this. I've been watching a lot of playoff football and it's getting me eager. So hopefully the Bears can be in there. But since the Packers aren't in there, it's just that much sweeter. It's so much more enjoyable. There's not that huge stress of like, dude, they got to lose. It's been nice. So thanks again, Detroit Lions. But PayPal, let's get right into this. Who do you have who's your first team that you think is going to resemble the Bears next year?
Yeah, my first one, Brett, is I think the Jaguars are kind of that number one. And that's why I really specified, even if they lost, like the Jags, they could have won yesterday. Or they looked good. Like they have everything in place. Trevor Lawrence, you got that young quarterback, which we have. And then you got that new younger running back like Khalil Herbert, like we do. And what they really needed last year, first of all, was a head coach. That was the big thing. But then they really needed offensive weapons. And you see their offensive weapons. They're basically all new guys. I mean, Etienne was new. Jamal Agnew was new. Christian Kirk, Zay Jones. I totally forgot we were talking about this pre-show. Calvin Ridley was someone they also added.
Yep.
Marvin Jones and then Evan Ingram. Like they completely just gave all these receivers to Trevor Lawrence. And I just thinking about that, you automatically think of Justin Fields and just what we could do this offseason of giving him more weapons to throw to. And that will just, hopefully positive correlate and give us, a better passing game.
Agreed. The Jags are the easy one. That was my first one. YouTube user out here is also saying the Jags, for all the reasons that you mentioned. But I think about too, you have Tyson Campbell, a corner that they drafted in the second round and didn't do that great his first year. Maybe Kyler Gordon can take a step and do something along those lines. Hopefully we don't draft a Trayvon Walker type of player where it's pure athlete, but maybe we can get one of those pure athletes later on if we end up trading down and get someone mid first or something like that. So that's the big thing. So I think overall that is the number one. They built a whole bunch in free agency. And that's the biggest correlation. Also, there is the Cowboys going on as we are recording this.
Hey, they're down last time I checked. So that's good.
I'm actually kind of rooting for the Cowboys, even though a lot of people don't like the Cowboys. Yeah, I I don't know. I want to see them, and we've seen the 49ers do their thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I personally want to see the Cowboys. That's just me though. But PayPal, I want to bring someone else up that because the Jags were the easy one. This next one next year, I think, is a little bit far off. But I'm going to cheat and say this could potentially be the Bears in a couple years. And what I mean by this is Ryan Poles he's a trenches guy and he wants to build in the trenches. He wants to trade back. He understands the value of draft capital. And maybe this year, the Bears trade for a number one wide receiver and try and get and acquire that
Yeah.
receiver with their small, undersized number two receiver. And building in the trenches, that's why the Eagles could be a good, maybe not, like I said, this year, but a following year. Because I think about, too, a good comp for Carter, Fletcher Cox. Quick first step, pass rush type of a guy. Might struggle with some of the double teams, but I think that's a good comp for him as well. And if the Bears, let's say, all the rumors are pointing to the Bears trading down to Indy, they could get that player like a Fletcher Cox, like a like a Carter, not Tyree Carter, but like Carter. But I think also then getting potential wide receivers as well. I think this is a good frame because what do the Eagles do? They draft in the trenches. They always get defensive linemen. They always get offensive linemen. And I think this could be a good prototype. And they also get people that are free agents. James Bradbury, starting corner, got because he got cut. Darius Slay got him because he got cut, right? That's where I really do think the Bears could be building a lot like him. Also, who's the man in the middle? You got Mr. Edwards from a one Wisconsin Badgers undrafted, TJ Edwards, who I still say is very, very similar to Jack Sanborn. Undersized guy, didn't seem to have that speed. I really like the comp that the Bears could be similar to the Eagles, maybe not next year, but definitely in a couple of years because of the way they're building. And I haven't even touched on Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, similar. Mobile quarterback, can run with them, but I do think Justin Fields has a higher overall ceiling. So that's me.
Yeah. Hey, I think, another, I think a great comparison. And I think this is almost like, like down the road, you hope what the Bears can be. And I think it is interesting thinking about, do they try to trade and get that official number one? Because I mean, I was talking to our dad just watching, football today, and you just see all the teams that have fallen already and all the teams that are doing well. And they have that number one receiver they can go to. I mean, the Chiefs, it's not a receiver, it's it's a tight end and Travis Kelce. And I mean, you see AJ Brown, he just elevated this offense so much. And Jalen Hurts obviously took that next step where we definitely got from Fields already, but getting that number one wide receiver would be massive and could, maybe not this year, but be that next year kind of transformation into the Eagles. And it just shows you too. I think of our secondary where we also need that extra corner. I think, we have Jalen Johnson, we have Gordon, and then they got James Bradbury. It's like, where's, we got to get someone that can also, that's proven a lot and step into that role. I mean, there's a huge list of names that we've, gone through in past videos. Like, I know you really like Jamal Dean, and there's just, there's a lot of guys this year where we can just pick up and really, I think, help this team go to the playoffs.
For sure. And PayPal, there's two. Are we done? Are there other? Yeah, we're done now. Are there any other ones out there that really kind of stand out for you?
Yeah, it's hard because those comparison. I mean, you think of Jalen Hurts. I think that offense is really how our offense would run. There's definitely a lot. I know we just that wouldn't be us. I don't know if you have any teams that we you think that we could possibly become. But I know there's a few teams in my mind like, okay, we're not gonna, be the Chiefs. We're not gonna have that Patrick Mahomes air raid. Um, it's like he doesn't have the receivers. It's just because it's Patrick Mahomes and he's a god of an athlete and
Yeah.
incredible.
I'll bring up two then if you want. I can bring up two that I still think Jacksonville is number one. I think that Philly from a long term is number two, but then I think those are the blueprints. But some like honorable mentions that I think the Bears could be very similar to. I'm going with two teams that have played today. One of them is the Buffalo Bills, because I think that Josh Allen, the closest thing to Josh Allen right now is a Justin Fields, because how he's bigger than everybody else. He's significantly faster. But I think that type of framework as well, where get that number one. We haven't seen that number one. And then Josh Allen took that next leap when he was able to get Stephon Diggs. So some people might scoff at that and say the Bills, but honestly, you give him a number one. Let's see what he's capable of now, because he doesn't have that. And then the running game is almost like a second thought to it. Dawson Knox said not a big fan of him, but he does what he needs, which I think Kmet can kind of fit that role. But when you get that number one, when you get some of that extra speed, think about a Darnell Mooney as that Gabe Davis, as that Isaiah McKenzie. I think there's a lot of comps to this, but then you build a strong middle of the defense with some linebackers, and linebackers were the core of Matt Eberflus's defense as well. I think that that's what they ultimately go for. And you look at the secondary, Jordan Poyer, and they've had Micah Hyde for the longest time as well. They have good safeties, good linebackers, and that's what I think that the Bears can really try and mimic with them. So yeah, the best team in the league that just lost today, I do think that there is a fair case to say big jump from Justin Fields if you give him that number one. So that's someone I'm looking at.
Yeah. Hey, yeah, I completely agree. And I do really think about that secondary. The Bills were strictly a team that, their defense they had an insane secondary. I mean, who's the guy? I'm trying to think their corner, you think of their safeties too, but then they finally kind of brought those guys in at the front seven, which I think what we need those front seven guys. But I thought of one, Brad, and this one I was thinking, I think the G-Men, the Giants, I think that is if we're talking, I don't think we're going to be that bad in a year. I think we will achieve more in this upcoming year, but I just bring them up just because I think of the running quarterback, and then also just they have a running quarterback, and then also if we're really kind of being that run heavy team where if we really re-sign David Montgomery or get a big name in the free agency, rely heavy on the running game and yeah, but the G-Men, I think we will be above that, because that's kind of how I feel like our team is right now, where we are this tough, hardworking team, and we're very scrappy, and we try to run out the clock and try to, just win by the last seconds. Like the G-Men, you're not going to see them come back and win a game. And that's how I kind of felt this team was this year, but I think we'll be able to get further than that,
Yeah. And all the rumors about Saquon Barkley coming to the Bears. There you go.
Hey, yeah. There you go.
By rumors, I mean, one reporter from ESPN's like, they have enough cap space to sign him. But we'll see what they end up doing for sure. And I like the idea too of like an Andrew Thomas took a huge step at that left tackle position. Maybe our left tackle makes a jump as well. But I think overall, yeah, that's decent. The only thing that I get fuzzy on is I hate saying this, but is it coaching as well? Like that you hear a lot about Fat Nagy over there being a great coach.
Yeah.
Matt Eberflus, can he do that as well? That's where we're kind of hoping that he can do something. But let's see what else. The only other one that I had was a little bit of Dallas, just because I look at Dallas and you get like a player like a Micah Parsons at that edge position. If we're able to get like a Will Anderson, an undersized guy that was kind of seen as the guy for multiple years, you bring that person in, does that transform this defense? And also Dak Prescott, a lot of comps to Justin Fields. I don't
Eh,
really see it. Yeah, I don't really see it. Like
yeah,
if you say, well, he's kind of a runner, but kind of not. But I think it goes back to the same thing. You get a number one like a CeeDee Lamb, or you draft someone like that in the second. And I have some data that I'm so excited to share. I'm just putting the finishing touches on my report. But they win in the trenches as well with that offensive line. Every year you hear about that offensive line. I think that's really where the Bears can mimic that. And I do think that Kmet is more comparable to Dalton Schultz
mhm.
than Dawson Knox. So that's one of the pieces. And also the backup running back was better than the starter this year. Just like Khalil Herbert, who dominated on the ground compared to David Montgomery, who still did well, but the only difference, Pollard can play all three downs, unlike Khalil Herbert. But PayPal,
Mhm.
what do you think of that? And then any others that you got out there?
Yeah, I think there are great comparisons. I think, you know, I still think those first two are, the very closer comps. I mean, I really think of, the Jags and the Eagles kind of where they were. I think they were also in like the similar situation with like record wise, kind of draft capital wise, and also free agent, spending money wise. So those teams, I'm still like, I like these comparisons, but still, those are like, I really hope, especially the Eagles, you really hope to see
Yeah,
this team evolve into them. But again, the Jags are, you saw them, they were that younger team. And I think that's going to be kind of how this team is, where we still kind of see those younger team mistakes that aren't as, proven as the Eagles or, Chiefs, where they just seem so mature in the playoffs when you watch them.
for sure. So, and then I was kind of going through some other ones as well. And one that was like a little was like Baltimore. They really just play it safe. And that's where I'm curious if Poles does something like that. I like the way that they build, where they just go, okay, this guy's really good. Just draft him. Like, don't overthink it. Draft best available, like what they
Yeah.
did with Kyle Hamilton when he fell to them. But yeah, besides that, though, I look at the other ones. Seattle. Like, I hope we're not like Seattle, where it's like these guys are just fake. These guys are phony. And but I look at the other ones, you have Hall of Fame players around them, right? You have Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver. There's a difference between a number one and being Justin Jefferson, I feel. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's the big thing, where AJ Brown, at least you can bring in someone similar to an AJ Brown. Then you got Tampa with Tom Brady, you got KC with Kelsey, the best tight end in the game, with Mahomes, the best quarterback hands down in the game. San Fran, I was going to put San Fran, but the playmakers that they have out there with Samuel and Ayuk, like it's hard to mimic that. And that's same thing with Miami and LA. I just hope we're not like LA, because they always get injured and they always flop. So
Hmm.
was there any of that list that I just kind of crapped on that you're like, actually,
No,
there's someone that
no,
I like?
yeah, none of the yeah, none of those guys. Hey, Brad, don't hate on the
Yeah, yeah.
Chargers, no.
That's a big
But
idea. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's teams like that where, it, like, I don't think our team can get that point yet, or we won't see it develop for another couple years or so. Like with the talent of the 49ers, you're like, will we really be able to get that just in 1 year?
Yeah.
And then same, the Chargers, they have a lot of talent, but I think we have the coach, um, and they really don't. Um, and yeah, I think the first two we had they get me really excited for the future, Brad, because it's like if we can be like any of those teams that we mentioned, I would be a happy man, happy
Yeah.
camper.
So the five that we mentioned total, number one was the Jags, number two was the Philadelphia Eagles, and then kind of, I guess, right after that, we then had brought up the Bills, brought up the Cowboys, brought up the Giants. Now, I want to just call this out. So part of this exercise is, what did they do that we can mimic, or how are they and how can we be similar to that? Number one is the number one wide receiver. We, like, 3 of those teams brought in a number one, arguably 4, with Jacksonville bringing in Christian Kirk. Now, I don't think he's a true number one, but you brought in that help, and that's what really ideally launched them. And then also, too, there's a defensive playmaker that makes a difference. I think when we're talking about this draft, no matter what you think, Carter and Anderson, there's 3 blue chip prospects, consensus across the league. It's Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, and Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. Those are the 3. So we're not going to pick Bijan number 1, even though that'd be hysterical. But really, you see these teams, playmaker on defense that transforms it, and a sort of a number 1 wide receiver that we can bring in. But PayPal, anything else? This might be a quick one.
Yeah, I think you hit it. You hit it well, because we hopefully too, like, you think of the Eagles, they developed a really good offensive line, from just drafting, and you just hope that we're able to develop that offensive line into, you saw kind of an upgrade. We got a little bit better this year. Last year, 2 years ago, it was absolutely horrendous. But then you see a little bit of a step, and then hopefully we can make that final step and solidify, getting a new center, getting, fix that right side of the line as well. So hopefully we can do that.
That's where I love Ian Cunningham. I think, like, coming from the Eagles, I'm nervous when he goes. I know that there's like the picks that we could potentially get. I'm just nervous because, like, the way that the Eagles are built is something that should really work with the Bears, winning in the trenches, like you said. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be interesting. Let me know if you're watching out there on YouTube. Let me know down in the comments, who do you think the Bears are going to be most like next year? And make sure to like and subscribe. Also, you can check out the podcast everywhere that you get your podcasts. Just search for Unbearable Sports. And if you like to sports bet or wanted to try to get into it, go to betus.com or click the link in the description and use promo code Unbearable for 125% back on your first deposit. Just bet responsibly. And everyone, thank you so much. And with that, Unbearable Sports Podcast, we're out.
Yeah, she's got some nice long hair, and you know that she's a bad chick.